Hey guys, remember to like the video and hit subscribe.
So let's talk about. I know Destiny has been reading a lot of historical stuff. We'll get to that later, but let's talk about nuts and bolts here. So what I'm a proponent of total immigration restriction to all Western countries. I'm guessing from the series of opinions you have that you're for mass immigration. Am I right about that, Mr. Destiny?
Not generally. I'm for immigration as long as it makes economic sense, I guess. As long as yeah, I mean, within reasonable restrictions. I mean, I'm not gonna have any race quotas or whatever. If I don't know where you're going with it, but
well, there is no economic sense to immigration. There's no need for immigration in the United States right now.
That's our unemployment is literally at 3 point. Our unemployment is literally the lowest it's ever been in the history of the United States. It's at 3.5%. Like, businesses are hiring at like.
Believe that number? You believe that number? You think only 3% of people in this country are out of work? You really think that?
That's not what the U3 unemployment stands for. I'm sorry. You're going to cite the U6 like I've never heard of it before. We can pretend that there's
well,
a
then why do you use that? Why do you use the fake statistic rather than the real?
Well, because that's a really good question, you know. Yeah. And if we were to wander in, well, yeah, no, that's a really great question. No, I'm not being disingenuous. It's a very difficult question for economists to ask. There's a lot of different ways to keep track of unemployment. For instance, do we count young people that are under the age of 18 but could still technically work but would have to do it at restricted hours? Do we count older people that have willingly left the workforce? Do we count people that are collecting Social Security but are still working? It's a really hard. Do we count people that are not really looking for work? Do we count people that are discouraged from looking for work? That's a really complicated question. It's funny that you're going to sit here and pretend like it's got such an obvious answer when it's one of the most hotly debated things in economics, and it's one of the reasons why the federal government keeps 7 different numbers on unemployment.
My point is that
your point was incorrect. It's not simple.
The answer isn't immigration. That's my point.
Okay, that's fine, but the U3 unemployment, which is widely regarded as one of the better metrics for how we should figure unemployment, is 3.5%. It's lower than it ever has been in the history of all of unemployment. And the U6 unemployment, which is maybe another one that you want to use, which includes discouraged workers, is 7%, which is also lower than what we would consider most frictional employment.
There's also an undercount. Because it's not counting people that are going on disability,
it does. That's literally why these other forms of unemployment tracking exist. You can look at labor force participation rate. You can look at the U3, U4, U5, or U6. You can look at any measure you want, Stryker, and it's all going to tell you the same thing.
Furthermore, why isn't the unemployment rate zero? And if the unemployment rate's not zero, why do we need more immigration?
So the unemployment rate isn't zero because some level of frictional unemployment is considered necessary for an economy to function. You want businesses to be able to hire people, and you want people to be able to apply to businesses for jobs. Economists consider ideal unemployment to be about 5.5%, anywhere from 5 to 6%, depending on which.
Is that ideal for the people out of work?
That's ideal for the people and the businesses. Yeah, the people in businesses.
Yeah, and that's not who we should be prioritizing. We should be prioritizing the average people in this country.
Yeah, prioritizing the average people in the country doesn't mean 0% unemployment.
I don't care if a business needs 100 million Mexicans to work for cheap. I don't care about that.
Well, but you do care if poor people can't afford to buy all their food from Trader Joe's or from some $17 for a gallon of milk store. You know, lower cost of goods is actually important to a lot of people that can't afford to buy, the most expensive shit they can in the United States. Not only are lower cost of goods important to people,
how come food is affordable in Japan where there's no immigration?
Japan has a totally different style of government and has a whole bunch of problems.
Not really. It's a liberal democracy with a capitalist economy. What are you talking about? It's the same economy. It's literally a country that was occupied and founded by the United States. So why is it
this is the weirdest non sequitur I've ever heard in my entire life? Japan literally has a one-party system and has some of the highest cost of living in the entire world. That's really what you think the United States of America should go to?
So do many cities in America that have the most immigrants. LA, New York, these places have some of the highest costs of living in the world, and they're full of immigrants. So what are you talking about?
Why would I compare LA to Japan?
Because it has a high cost of living, and there's many millions of people living there.
I can move an hour out of LA, and I can move 1 hour out of LA and rent like a 4-bedroom house for $2,500.
What does that have to do with what I'm saying?
Because I don't know why you're comparing the literal most expensive places to live in the United States to the totality of other countries. It's mind-numbingly fucking stupid.
The state of California, the cities in the state of California are some of the most expensive on the planet.
And some of the cheap, there are very cheap cities to live in California as well. Have you ever been to Central California or Northern California?
Oh yeah, those are lovely places. What I'm saying
so you're saying
is,
the only you're saying the most lovely places are the ones with all the immigration? I don't know if that's the road you want to go down there, dude.
What part of Central California are you talking about? What place in particular?
There are places in Central California. I don't know. Nobody knows them because nobody wants to go there because people want to be in L.A. where all the immigrants are, surprisingly enough, or San Diego, or up north in San Francisco, or San Jose. Like,
the point I'm making here is that a lot of those the very, very cheap places are full of like basically illegal Mexicans in parts of Central California.
I thought you said the most expensive places were the ones that had high immigration. Now you're saying the cheap places are the ones with high immigration? What about Texas and Arizona where the cost of living is cheaper? There's tons of immigrants.
Let me explain this very slowly so you can't.
Please, because almost everything you said contradicts itself.
Okay.
Go for it.
So, no. Okay.
It's a lot easier in a blog post, I'm sure.
Let me explain it slowly.
Okay, go for it. I'm ready.
So countries that have very low rates of immigration have affordable food. Poland, Japan, Hungary. People there don't starve. People there can afford food. They have no immigrants. Okay. In America, the places with some of the most dense concentration of immigration have the highest rates of poverty, and yet also the most high prices of virtually everything. Everything is more expensive in LA. Everything is more expensive in New York City. If you move out to, I don't know, Pennsylvania, where there are very few immigrants, everything is half the price. So why is that if what you're saying is true?
So America has affordable food. I don't know if you know that or if you think that all food in America is unaffordable. I don't know what comparing the affordability of food is in other countries is relevant to the affordability of food in America. And also,
very relevant because if you're saying immigration means cheap food, and I show you a country that has no immigration and also has cheap food, then
Japan is not an example of that, though. When you used as an example, Japan is Japan's cost of living and economy are so much trouble. They're actually begging for immigrants now. Japan has opened itself up to immigration more than ever.
In Japan, it's cheaper than Tokyo. You're talking about the big cities there.
I can go to big cities in Texas. I can go to Austin. I can go to Dallas. These are places with a lot of immigrants that also have really low cost of living.
Austin is insanely expensive, and Dallas is getting up
compared
there.
To a place like L.A. Absolutely not.
Well, not compared to L.A., but it's definitely Austin is amongst the most expensive parts to live in Texas. It's because of many reasons, not just immigration.
Maybe in Texas, but compared to the rest of the U.S., Austin is fairly cheap.
Okay. Well, you made a point. You said that having an entire class of basically serfs, illegal immigrant serfs, working for wages below.
Can you stop saying illegal? I've never said illegal immigrants. We're talking about immigrants. If we're talking about illegal immigrants, we can have that conversation.
Oh, who do you think is picking your lettuce, bro? You think it's people with citizenship? Those are people.
We're pivoting.
That
we're
are
pivoting. This is a big pivot. If you want to talk about
country, but they're hideously exploited. Agricultural labor in this country is some of the most exploited of all the sectors, and it's because the people doing it are illegal immigrants from Mexico that don't have any rights, and also they work for very cheap. So
okay, I agree with you on that point. I'll concede we should have amnesty for all the illegals. Okay,
yeah, that's exactly what I think.
Gotcha. I agree with that. But also illegals and legal
immigrants.
You
should send them home, and they can fight their banks in their country and have a better society.
So that's slave labor then should be white people in the U.S. or do we get the other?
No. How about this?
Uh-huh.
One, you use machines. And two, you pay agricultural labor what it's actually worth. You know, it's so interesting. I saw an article about the Mississippi chicken plants they had, the meat packing and all that. Remember, there was an ICE raid there. And in the 1960s, people in those plants made more, when adjusted for inflation, significantly more money an hour. I can't think of the exact number at the moment. I can pull it up. Significantly more money an hour. In fact, the guy who wrote Fast Food Nation wrote about this. What's his name? Let me look this up. You can say wow, but
we're talking about chicken machines in Mississippi. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So this guy, he's a journalist who studies these things. Eric Schlosser. He wrote that
he's not Jewish, is he?
I don't know. I mean, is that relevant to you?
I don't know. I hope not. I'm not sure if he's trustworthy.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
You brought it up earlier with Goldman Sachs. I'm just curious to be Jewish now. I just want to make sure we're being consistent on when we care about Jewish people.
I'm not. I know you have like this caricature of me in your mind, but I'm not some like reflexive bigot.
Anybody that like true, anybody that brings up Jews in an unprovoked manner, it sets off a lot of red flags for me, dude.
Let me get.
All right, go back to the chicken factories. Go ahead.
So, Americans that work there made more money, significantly more money, were out for the very tough work than illegal aliens that were raided by ICE were making last year.
Sure.
And so my point with that is that maybe a pound of chicken is worth a little more.
What is something worth? How do you determine that? I'm super curious when you say what it's actually worth.
Is this like one of those open-ended? Are you like Mises guy or something?
So I don't know if you realize. So you've done it. You did it. So earlier, I didn't forget. You did this with high culture as well. You drop these really loaded terms where you're begging the question. I think your audience knows what you mean, but you don't actually have. Wait,
you don't know the difference between a black man and a white man. How am I going to expect you to differentiate between Mozart and Kanye West?
Well, I can differentiate it because I have the educational background to do so. Firstly, secondly, I can tell you understand a black man and a white man. They look different.
If you have no starting point for reason, how can I talk to you in a manner that requires logic? You temporarily suspend logic in order to try and win a tie in an argument.
So you can't use words like logic when you're literally begging the question at every point. You never defined what high culture meant earlier. I let you get away with it because I don't care, right? Well, but now you're telling me maybe you're giving me a prescription. You're telling me something that ought to be. You're telling me that maybe we should pay agricultural labor what it's actually worth, implying that right now we're paying it less than what it's worth. So I'm curious, what is it worth to you?
What is it worth?
Why can't you?
How do you decide? Okay.
Yeah.
Let me give you some very Mr. Finance 101. Let me give you
go for it.
Economy 101.
Okay.
The price of labor
Shut the fuck up,
people what people will take to do a job.
Okay.
And because Americans have families here, illegal aliens usually, not always, and I'm just going to be very, very specific and clear here so you don't get a way out.
Thank you.
Illegal aliens, not always, but many times, are single men who live, for example, in the agricultural industry. They live in these kind of barracks that these companies, agribusiness, puts up for them. Okay. They live together. They have a much lower standard of living because they're saving up dollars to send back to their country. Again, that's money that our economy loses, by the way. Many
we
billions.
Don't lose that money. It comes back to the United States. This also has to do with like finance, but I can explain that later if you want. So when we buy products or when we ship USD to other countries, that USD has to make its way back to the United States in the forms of purchasing goods or services or in the forms of capital investment. So for instance, we talk about like the trade deficit with China, or we talk about it's not reparations, it's repartitions. There's a name for the repatriation. Repatriation, yes, the money that you send overseas. When that USD exists in other countries, especially because it's like a Federal Reserve or the global reserve currency, that USD generally makes its way back to the United States in the forms of purchasing goods and services. Any other economy that's holding a lot of USD because of the way that governments work can't pay taxes in that currency, so it has to bring that USD back to the US to invest or buy things. So for instance, our giant trade deficit with China, oftentimes when we buy things from China, that money makes its way back to the US in the form of investments or in the form of purchase of goods and services.
Who gets those profits though? Well, hold
on. So I understand that you just got an answer that you totally weren't ready for. Now we can run down to try to find where the Jews get paid off at the end of this. However, Listen, I don't need to answer. I don't need to answer your extended trying to figure out like how you could possibly be right here. I'm just telling you that when USD goes overseas or goes to other countries, that isn't lost. It doesn't hurt our economy. That's just not true. Now, if you want to talk about what's an appropriate way to distribute income in the United States to different classes of people, I'm all for that. I love redistribution.
Exactly what I'm talking.
Sure, then let's talk about tax policy, not this weird idea.
No, I don't want to talk about tax policy. I want to stress the point about immigration. The point I'm making, you can have all these. You got a lot of tricks in your bag. I'll give you that. You can say,
tricks are 101 understandings of finance and economics.
People then spend dollars, and you don't take into consideration that when some Mexican spends $100,000 in Mexico with Mexican labor to build a house in Mexico, that is all economic activity lost to the average workers in the United States.
Where does that USD go in Mexico? What do they do with it? Do they just bury it in a hole?
It gets translated into the national currency usually.
How do they translate it?
It goes into paying for goods. That's why countries see it almost as a subsidy from America to have illegal aliens sending remittances.
It's not a subsidy though. That's not how it works. It's just that's just not. It's not. There's not like a magic. No. There's not a magic money. There's not like a magic money photocopier where you take your USD into a Mexican bank and you just magically turn that into a peso. That USD has to make its way back to the U.S. in the form of the purchasing of a good or service, or in some form of capital investment. Like that's it. That's like it has.
There's a lot of the capital and investment. Okay, listen. Let's get back to the core question.
The core question. So you were telling me that illegal immigrants don't have to make a lot of money because they don't have families, but then you told me that they actually make money and then they send the money back to their families in Mexico.
And here's the thing.
Which one is it?
Here's the thing. Okay.
Yeah.
My point. See, you keep assuming that I'm going to care that I speak on behalf of the white working people of America. Okay?
You just said you wanted to automate their agricultural jobs. How are you telling me that you want to speak on their behalf? You said you literally said, and I quote it because I wrote it down. You said
white people are actively discriminated from agricultural.
You literally said quote. You said quote.
Many immigrants are selected for.
You literally said quote. Use machines for agricultural labor. Like you literally said that. Do you remember saying that or?
Let me rewind the tape for you. Okay. What I said.
Mm-hmm.
I said that immigration is a problem in many ways.
Okay.
You said, but we need mass immigration. We need these people.
I never said we needed mass immigration, but go ahead.
Oh, okay. We need immigration to do agricultural work so that food is affordable. I never said that.
This was your claim, but go ahead.
Okay. Well, people can rewind the video later and see.
Sure, they can. Find where I said we need immigration.
You made the claim that it's necessary to keep food cheap. I, on the other hand, showed you many industrialized countries with the exact same system America has, where they do not have any immigration and they have affordable food as well. So the point I'm getting at here is that is not an argument for immigration, the fact that it keeps food cheap. Let's stick to the fucking core.
Sure, stick to the core
argument.
So you're going to compare the U.S., to places like Japan that have an insanely high cost of living for food or higher cost of food than the U.S.
The U.S. has food prices have been going up in America too. So, I mean, what is your point?
Yeah, they've been going up too, but not as much as they have been in Japan.
The higher cost of food in Japan is compensated by higher wages. That's just how it works, okay? And the reason they have higher wages is there's less competition for jobs from immigrants. I mean, it's market 101, buddy. This is something that people have always taken into account, always acknowledged, until very recently were like both the communists and the capitalists like yourself, the neoliberals like yourself. You guys agree with Cato Institute bullshit, but that doesn't make it true. Okay, the reason why...
Wait, so is Economics 101 all bullshit, or are you citing it? Because I don't know.
Economics 101 says that if there's more people competing for a job, wages are going to be lower. That's not controversial.
But it is, because it's more complicated than that, right? Higher availability...
You saying that? You said Economics 101. I'm telling you what Economics 101 says.
Sure,
if there's
I can
more
tell
people competing for a job, you're going to get paid a lot less.
Yeah, but you're assuming that putting more people in a certain market competing for a job will only have the impact of those people competing for a certain job. You're not taking into account the other types of economic activity that can bolster native wages as well. For instance, more labor being available in a given area might allow you to open up other businesses. In those businesses that open up, complementary positions for like management or supervisors will open that generally natives are more qualified for than immigrants. This is why when people have studied massive immigrations to different areas and they've tried to find all these horrible impacts on native wages, it's generally not found. There is a certain subclass of people, generally people without a high school education, that'll take like a 2 to 4% loss in income over like a long term.
Let me refer you to the number one guy who studied the economic impact of immigration on wages. This guy is George Borjas.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with Borjas' research and his responses to David Card on his big Muriel Boatlift study. And Borjas himself will tell you that it's about 2 to 4% earnings in just high school graduates with no college education.
His 1995 study found that $500 billion have been redistributed away from natives into profits for capitalists. That is the actual sum that he came up with. $500 billion taken from American workers.
It's really interesting.
No,
wait, real quick. Wait, no, hold on. Just so I can respond to that. Because I know exactly what you're talking about. So that $500 billion, what he said is there's probably been a negative fiscal impact of immigrants by about $500 billion, but there's probably been a positive economic impact of about $500 billion. He said that at the end of the day, what we need is a better tax policy that can allocate money away from the winners of that immigration policy back towards natives. That's his contention. He's not saying that we need no immigration. He's just saying that a form of wealth transfer.
I'm not saying what his opinions. I'm talking about this one study, this one statistic. So you say
I'm very familiar with it. I've literally read the article. We can link it in chat.
Hold on.
No. Because you're misquoting him. You're making it sound like he's anti-immigration.
No, you're the one that's misquoting. I say $500 billion in profits for capitalists, which is what he says. Big business. It's concentrated in the hands of a few.
Yeah.
Okay. And that money is taken. That's $500 billion taken from the many. Okay, that's the point I'm making. That American workers lost $500 billion, and lo and behold, it's in the pocket of the big capitalists in this country. And guess what? These people use it to they don't use it in productive ways. That's the first thing. You can say progressive tax policy. I say let's end immigration and put that money back in the pockets of the people in this country.
And the way you do that is with tax policy.
No, you don't. You do it by ending immigration, deporting all illegals. That's how you do it.
Sure. So I'm going to literally
throw them up against the wall.
Sure. So let me wait, real quick, because I'm just going to read the article because I'm very familiar with this Borjas article where he talks about this 500 billion figure. So I'm literally quoting Borjas himself, which is the guy that you decided to cite, by the way. But we're worrying about the wrong things, with policy fights focused on how many and which immigrants to accept, and not enough on how to mitigate the harm that they create along the way. To use a label recently coined by Larry Summers, a quote-unquote responsible nationalist, policy cannot ignore the reality that immigration has made some natives poorer. A policy that keeps them in mind might tax the agricultural and service companies that benefit so much from low-skilled immigrants and use the money to compensate low-skilled Americans for their losses and to help them transition to new jobs and occupations. Similarly, Bill Gates claims that Microsoft creates 4 new jobs for every H-1B visa granted. If true, firms like Microsoft should be willing to pay many thousands of dollars for each of these coveted visas. Those funds could be used to compensate and retrain the affected natives in the high-tech industry. If you're going to cite somebody like Borjas, know that Borjas' prescriptions for these problems is with tax policy. It's not just closing the border. It's not just closing the borders.
What his prescriptions are.
I'm just going to say that
I'm concerned because I have different. Listen. There's a difference between diagnosis and the solution, right? So he's diagnosing the problem. He has a different solution than me. I agree with you. Okay.
Why would you say? Why would you give a diagnosis?
I'm not a George Borjaist who is going to follow every single thing he believes on everything.
Why would you take the diagnosis of somebody that has so much more training and background in this and then give your own prescription? That's like saying, I went to the doctor and they diagnosed me with cancer, but I ignored his chemo suggestions. I'm going to go do homeopathy or some shit.
Because if you're a critical thinker, you can take information hard data other people come up with, and you can create different types of solutions. That's why Donald Trump got elected in 2016. He got elected because statistics like Borjas were concerning to Americans, and they did the obvious thing, which is vote for less immigration, okay? Because that obviously would help redistribute some of that money. I mean, forget immigration. There's no political will to raise taxes on the wealthy either. But that's another question.
Wait,
but
raising taxes on the wealthy?
I also want to dispel the myth.
Raising taxes on the wealthy is one of the few things that all Americans unite on, even Republicans.
Yes,
so there
and
is
good luck getting Congress to do it. Good luck getting Congress to do it.
Well, maybe under a Biden presidency it'll happen.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah, right.
All right, go ahead. Listen, let's finish this segment up, and then we'll let Destiny get a topic, and we'll let you get a topic. Yeah,
let me just give Mr. Destiny over here. I would like, for all you socialists listening, all you people that follow Vosh, who's a phony socialist. He, one thing I'll say aside from everything, I don't want to talk bad about the guy. He's not here, but I saw a debate.
But I'll resist. But yeah, go.
I saw a debate with him and Sargon about immigration. Yeah. And I saw that Vosh was quoting the Cato Institute for reasons why immigration is great for the country. And I'm like, bro, do you know what the Cato Institute is? For all you Vosh fans listening, all you angry Vosh fans, the Cato Institute also has studies that show that 10-year-olds in China working in India working in sweatshops is good for the economy. So this is an example of the most rapacious, evil, globalist capitalism on the planet. Christ. They are there to rationalize this kind of horrible, this horrible, inhumane system. And the Cato Institute is quoted by these phony socialists. No socialist who supports immigration is a true socialist. He's a neoliberal wearing red. That's all it is. He's no different than Destiny in many ways.
So
anyway, let me just get back to the topic quickly.
Well, wait, hold on. He just brought this whole
Found Kana and Morales 2017 study. In 2001, the number of American workers displaced by foreign labor. This is, again, by the way, this is about the H-1B program, not about, because there's this bullshit talking point that it's only low-skilled workers. These are high-skilled workers. Many Americans want to work in tech because it's one of the highest-paying industries in this country, and it's suffering because of immigration. In 2001, they found, and this is before H-1Bs really exploded, they found that the number of American workers qualified for jobs were displaced by H-1B foreign labor approached 11%. 11% of Americans with STEM degrees, very expensive, indebted up their ass. They can't get jobs in STEM because foreigners are being imported to do the job. In the same year, they calculated that their wages would have been 5% higher that year if the H-1B visa program did not exist. This is a 2017 study. Okay. Now, you can say, well, 5%, it's not a big deal. But if you're making 80 grand a year, 5% is a lot of money. Okay. So that's, and this is probably an underestimation. Let's talk about construction. In 1973, Destiny, a construction worker in California made $31.84 an hour. Today, a construction worker makes $25.97 an hour. That's almost $6 less. Well, this is a lot of money. This is not taking into account how much the median cost of living in California has risen since 1973. How about care workers, health workers? It says the demand for home care workers has risen 20%, and yet their wages don't go up. Male care worker wages have decreased by 16% from 2005 to 2015. And this correlates perfectly with an influx of immigrant labor in the field, which is estimated to be 20%. This is one of the lowest paying industries in the country, even though there's a massive demand for it. American workers could be doing these jobs. This is my point, Destiny, is that this is not.
Can we do this? Can we move point by point, because you misquote so much stuff that it makes me weak to not be able to respond to it. So for this 2017 paper that you cited, right? So in just reading the abstract at the end here, right? In the absence of immigration, wages for U.S. computer scientists would have been 2.6% to 5.1% higher, and employment in computer science for U.S. workers would have been 6.1% to 10.8% higher in 2001. This is a pretty old data set. The tech industry has changed quite a bit since then, but sure, in 2001.
There are more H-1B now or less?
On the other hand, well, tech has also grown monumentally in the past 20 years. I'm not sure if you've been here or not. I don't know how old you are.
Have H-1B visas grown compared to the growth, actually?
Well, I don't know. What do you think? Do you have those numbers on hand, or are you just going to make an assumption?
Absolutely. They're a little down now, but the tech industry is constantly fighting. You have situations like AT&T where they're using this. They're bringing people in and getting the American workers. This is thousands of American workers. They have to train their replacements. Okay, I mean, this is not a joke. This is not something I'm just making up. This is happening in this country.
Okay, so I would need to see the numbers, because STEM degrees, including comp sci degrees, pay a significantly higher sum of money than other comparable forms of degrees. The compensation for these degrees is astronomical. So the idea that these workers are being hurt, maybe in some marginal sense they are. In the one paper that you quoted that I was able to find, and I would have to go through and find. I'm willing to bet you're probably misquoting or misciting every single thing you're bringing up, based on what you've said so far.
Say that doesn't mean it's true.
Well, but every single thing I've looked into has been true. So, for instance, at the end of the abstract
you
of this,
just read the paper and it gives me the truth there. So
I wasn't done reading. You started cutting me off. Okay. So the ending part of this is, on the other hand, complements in production benefited substantially from immigration, and immigration also lowered prices and raised the output of IT goods by between 1.9 and 2.5%, thus benefiting consumers. Finally, firms in the IT sector also earned substantially higher profits due to immigration. So it sounds to me, if these workers are coming in and making these firms so far more profitable, and if consumers are saving money, sounds like we just need to tax people that use H-1Bs a little bit more, like Borjas himself even suggested, and that would fix all of these problems. We would
how would it How would it fix problems? How is taxing a corporation alone going to fix the problem of someone who can't get it, who's passed up for a job?
This doesn't exist. This person doesn't exist. All of these people.
So American workers aren't. That wasn't a big campaign issue in 2016 for Trump.
The big
went
campaign.
Out there with
no, it wasn't. 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 It was not a big. No.
Okay.
If it was a big issue, then why would hashtag Learn to Code have been so controversial? The issue was that construction workers and people that worked in manufacturing in the Rust Belt were losing jobs, not people losing jobs to H-1B visas. That is absolutely not true. Don't tell me that there were all these middle-class workers, these white-collar workers.
H-1B workers, Trump rally, and you will see them. They were speaking at Trump events. This is a problem. It's one of the problems that got Trump the election despite all of his flaws.
It's just
and you're just sitting there.
It's just not. We can all right now look up median wages paid to people with these tech degrees. They're massive. The wage premium
and they should be higher.
And they're not being. They're already paid higher than most equivalent workers around the world. What do you mean? These people are compensated higher than every other equivalent degree in our economy.
Gentlemen,
saved on. Okay,
go ahead. Let's just rein it in. 1 point to you, Stryker. 1 point to you, Destiny. I'll read the super chats and then we'll move to the next segment.
Sure. My only point is that as of 2018, the tech sector is literally begging for jobs. If anybody in this chat right now works for, or I'm sorry, goes to university and is working at comp sci, companies are constantly advertising, trying to bring people in from the schools into places to work. This idea that H-1B visas have flooded out the entire economy and that no one is hiring these workers is laughable. Maybe with a data set from 2001, when people were still using Ask Jeeves and Yahoo, maybe back then it had a more detrimental or deleterious impact. But they were all making my point. But
wait, let him finish, and then I'll let you finish, and then we'll move on.
Tech workers are some of the most in-demand jobs in the world. There is like a literal 500,000 job deficit right now of tech workers, which is why companies are begging for H-1Bs, because we don't even have enough tech workers in the United States to fill these jobs.
All right, now Stryker, don't interrupt him. Just let him finish, and then I'll read these, and then we'll go to the next. Go ahead.
So, here's the thing. Okay, the profits that the so-called consumer savings. First of all, I would, even if that were true, I would say maybe tech stuff should be a little more expensive if it means American workers get the job and they're compensated for what their work is worth. That's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is that the companies that go out there and say, "Oh, we have a labor shortage. We can't find people to work." The way you can, if significant numbers of STEM workers are not working in STEM, okay, I can find you the statistic. It's actually pretty big number. Would you like me to find it for you? Or do you need the pedantic? Okay.
I'm super curious where all these STEM degree holders are that can't earn any money.
Okay,
yeah,
I'll do that in a minute.
Okay.
I'll look it up. But here's the thing.
Yes.
The point is that the companies pretend that they have a labor shortage so that they can pressure the government to expand the H-1B system. Okay, and so this is the story for everything. You see also other industries. They're like, we can't find people to work. We can't. Well, why haven't they tried increasing benefits and pay? Because if you increase benefits and pay for a job, you're going to get people that are willing to move around the country. You're going to get people. These problems are essentially created by the companies themselves. They're not really suffering from this. It's not. Another thing too is that the quality of work, just anecdotally, the quality of work. I mean, the reason why Windows is garbage and every year it gets worse is because it's a bunch of Indians making it, and they work for cheap and they're not as good. The reason why basically, all these tech companies are just sitting on properties that they just keep remaking over and over and over, like the iPhone. This is they're out of ideas. And why are they out of ideas? Well, they don't hire white workers. They hire all these Indians to do it. That's just anecdotal. Listen, I'm not saying that I have hard facts and numbers to support that, but anecdotally, that's what I mean. And when it comes to the hard numbers, I'll just finish with this. To deny that the H-1B system was being used to not fill in gaps, but to replace Americans. Anyone can go on YouTube, look up H-1B or Google H-1B Trump rally or whatever. You will see the people that were working for Disney, AT&T, all these big major companies in America. They were working in tech or STEM or whatever, and they were being replaced, and they were they're forced to train their replacements, which is the most undignified and humiliating thing. And it's all done to save on labor costs. Okay. And most of those profits, my friend, do not go back to the consumer. Those profits go to the shareholders. And you might think that's morally right, but I don't think it is. I think that white workers in this country should benefit from our companies. We created the infrastructure in this country. We're the ones, you know what? If India is full of so many geniuses, why is their country a hole? Okay. That's what I would say. So you know what? That's just me finishing up.
There are so many weird stories here.
Wait.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
The fact that Microsoft's core workers are Indians because you see like commercials with IT guys like answering calls or scamming people. Jesus. Sorry. Go ahead, bro.
All right. Yeah. Now you're gonna have the opportunity to raise the next point, so it's up to you. And also, I mean, I had this slated for 2 hours. There's 30 minutes left. So if you guys want to go longer, I'm fine with that. But I just wanted to put that out there. More than fine with it, actually. But the real Tenchi says Destiny versus Ricada win. Nick isn't dumb like Striker. Robert 32 says if Destiny can talk faster, I might believe him. Chromatron says 5-hour stream. Come on, press 1 for 5-hour stream. King Porgy says nobody wants to go to the West Coast. Gross. Well, I was trying to go to the West Coast actually on Thursday, but they're not going to let me. So King Porgy says Destiny drags Striker into the weeds and Striker is too high T. Excuse me. IT, I almost said, because of the last conversation. Too high T to avoid the trap. Quote the stream. BG White says, can the guest agree to on Kelly Loeffler, whatever the fuck her name is? And I did intend to bring that up, the Senators insider trading, and I've made my feelings known on Twitter about that. Not a fan, but maybe we'll get to that. Ober Gropen Fuhrer just subscribed for 6 months. Thank you. Bethica73 says Destiny Kang of fast talking bullshit. Wowzers. A helpful friend says is the Spurg out for Adderall addict at 3 now? Pensive Cowboy says haha. Money printer go burr. Pug Dog says talk about Zog. Keep the eyes on the ball. Striker. Mega Meme says money printer brr. Arcade Outpost says who remembers AOL movie phone? I actually do. I'm that old. Pensive Cowboy says money comes back when we send it. Don't tell Israel. Arcade Outpost says Destiny Machine go burr. Pensive Cowboy says I am the Lorax. I speak for the trees. Robert 32 says Destiny talks fast. Some poops are fast sometimes. Harewood Silvatizzi says Destiny is the Shapiro sound-alike. I just got here. Robert 32 says Trump was elected because white people are fed up. Arcade Outpost says stop debating Saint GDP. Culture is more important. Arcade Outpost says never drink in Destiny. King Porgy says unmute Ozzy Mozzie. He's a good boy. Ralph, no, he's a piece of shit, and he will never be unmuted. But I'll take that as it is. Anon Semper says Michelle Malkin pinned Twitter thread about H1B. Now it's your turn, Destiny. Go ahead.
I don't even know where to start. It sounds like you literally called it. It sounds like you called into Apple tech support on your iPhone, and you heard an Indian on the phone, and you think that like everybody in these boardroom meetings or everybody like working on like the core software is like some guy that they like imported from India or something. Like everybody knows.
Yeah,
well, no, wait,
right. Indians don't work at Microsoft.
Well, I mean, I'm sure that they do in some positions, but the idea that core software is being developed by like random immigrants is just so hilarious. It's always funny because the only people that make these claims are people that have no firsthand experience in this industry at all. Like if you talk like, and the idea that these people should offer the idea that people. Well, hold on, these are all you stack all of these bullshit arguments on top of each other.
We got to hit the JQ, buddy.
We'll get there, I'm sure. Okay, the idea that like companies can just increase benefits, like the upper end of the wages starting out for like just comp sci majors is literally upwards of 100 to 150 thou. Like there are so many startups and tech firms you can hire at. What do you think they're gonna do? Just like if they just offer enough benefits, like randomly comp sci people are just gonna like puff out of thin air or some shit? Like it takes time to get these degrees. That's why schools are like dramatically trying to up how many people they can train for these jobs. The idea that like hiring more white workers at like a Apple store to be like an iPhone genius is going to make like more iPhone ideas or something. Like all of these like anecdotal, these weird things are like so strange and like are clearly coming from somebody that has like no in-industry experience and isn't even familiar with like the broad statistics related to it. Gotcha. Like anybody that works in any of these industries or anybody that like goes to school for any of these industries knows how hilariously wrong you are. They know that these companies are dramatically advertising to pull in workers for their jobs. They know that the wages paid to these people is dramatically high. Like
every pretty much next topic.
Yeah, we can move. Yeah, that's fine. If you don't walk back everything you said, we can move on because almost every single thing you said was wrong. Sure. Okay, go ahead. What are our next topics? Jesus.
Okay. You know what? Yeah, go ahead, Ralph. I'm sorry. Since we're running out of time, can we hit the JQ real quick? I don't want.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I don't want to cuck Destiny, but let's say so. My contention, Destiny, is that the Jewish community has enormous amounts of power over the United States of America, and this is seen in the finance industry. It's seen in the media, but it's very, very interesting how our foreign policy is particularly in the pocket of the Jews. And before you dismiss that as a mindless conspiracy theory, I can name you a number of foreign policy and geopolitical academics that agree with me. John Mearsheimer, Lawrence Wilkerson, Paul Pillar, Chaz Freeman, Eli Clifton.
Can we talk about
Andrew
positions?
J.
I don't know. Just
all
dropping,
these,
I don't know. Just dropping a bunch of names as opposed.
Well,
to
these are because I know that credentialism is very important to you. So that's why I'm saying
it hasn't, but I haven't used that at all. You literally just invented that position.
Have said that Zionists.
Just to be clear, you literally just invented that position for me to try to sound like you're making.
Okay, I'm not going to finish. All right, go ahead, babble.
Sure. So you just invented that claim. I haven't made any big deal about people being credentialed or whatever. You just are really excited to throw out 5 names you've memorized for the Jewish question. So just to be clear, I don't give a f about this guy is super credentialed or whatever. Yeah. Okay. So go ahead. We can talk about the actual ideas and not just throwing out random names. Yeah.
Fair enough. I'm just saying that because the reason is that what turns a conspiracy theory for a neoliberal kind of person that doesn't think for themselves like you. What turns a conspiracy theory into a fact is if the people in the academy or intellectuals agree. So
these
are people that study this. These are a number of people that study this stuff for a living, and in their careers they have said, and this is despite all the major institutional backlash that they've risked and gotten for it.
Academics get institutional backlash all the time.
That the Jewish lobby in America essentially dictates American foreign policy. I would like to hear your thoughts on it.
Well, let's talk about it. What kind of foreign policy are you talking about? Let's be a little bit more specific. So, for instance, when you talk about Mearsheimer, right? So I'm assuming you're talking about. I know that he wrote some stuff about AIPAC, but that doesn't even talk to the public, right? That's a lobby that literally only talks to policymakers. So, do you want to specifically talk about decisions that Congress makes insofar as doing foreign policy, or what? Let's be a little bit more specific.
Well, I want to ask you if the fact that the donors, the biggest donors to both parties, Jewish, if that has any role on whether politicians will listen to AIPAC. Do you think there might be anything to that?
No, because the numbers just don't really pan out. So, I kind of looked into this because I was curious because I figured we would talk about this, right? So, the top 10 donors, Jewish and non-Jewish, gave $50 million, okay, in the last presidential election cycle. And the total amount of Jewish donors gave between 100 to 160 million, right? The total spending in those campaigns was $2.5 billion. In 2012, Jewish donors comprised about 6% of spending to all presidential campaigns compared to their 2% representation in the population. Were they overrepresented? Were they... So Jews make up about 2% of the population. They comprise about 6% of spending on the presidential election.
6% of spending. Show me your numbers. The 2012 election?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to have to look into that. But I am more familiar with the 2016 election.
Okay.
Where the 2 biggest donors for Hillary Clinton, it was one of them is Haim Sabin. He's an Israeli. He gave Hillary Clinton a lot of money.
What does a lot of money mean?
He was the top donor.
What does a lot of money mean?
Well, I can look up the exact number.
Well, so that could mean $10 million, or that could mean $1 billion. What do you?
Well, if you're the number one donor, if you're the number one donor to a candidate, is that person going? Because if you look at the Hillary Clinton's WikiLeaks, you'll see that Haim Sabin is constantly emailing her on what to say about Israel. That's in her WikiLeaks. So, maybe that money does, because I remember you said something very stupid, which is that lobbyists don't have influence on policy.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be the case, yeah.
Yeah.
But you still haven't established any, like, I'm curious, how much money do you think that he's, because if this guy's donated like $5 million, I'm curious if you think that's enough to like dictate like American foreign policy, ignoring the fact that
it might change your mind on certain policies regarding Israel?
Not really. I think that probably the overwhelming support that Americans in general have for Israel is probably more determining of our foreign policy related to Israel than like some individual lobbyist, some Secretary of State, or somebody running for president.
What'd you say about?
I think that the overwhelming support that Americans have for Israel is probably more relevant to our foreign policy decisions than some donor of Hillary Clinton. Yeah.
Well, Americans overwhelmingly support many things. They support, I know you might dispute the immigration thing. I mean, I think there's overwhelming support for that, but you're going to dispute that.
Yeah, because the numbers don't back it up. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, you're gonna have like the numbers that say, would you deport the Mexican children?
No, the numbers are how important do you think immigration is, or like the racial makeup of the United States?
How about Medicare for all? Like Medicare for all is very popular with both parties.
No, it's not.
Yet people don't get that.
It's not very popular with both parties.
Look at the Democrat exit polls, and increasingly look at Republican polls that say people like it.
Yep. And if you look at well, hold on, because you made a wrong claim. If you look at KFF polls or people that poll like related to healthcare policy, you find that one, the majority of people don't even know what Medicare for all means, and two, you find that the people's reception to Medicare for all differs dramatically based on how you pose the question. So, for instance, if I ask Americans, how do you feel about a government program that gets rid of all private insurance, that's like 22% popular. If I say, how do you feel about a government program that covers all Americans, that's like 74% popular. So the idea that Americans overwhelmingly...
I'll meet you halfway.
Okay, sure.
I'll meet you halfway. Let's say the one that all Americans are covered by a government program.
Okay.
Well, that's not being turned into policy, right? Taxing billionaires is popular. It's not turned into policy. Regulating banks is popular, not turned into policy. Americans, Republicans more actually, are souring on America's foreign wars. And yet we keep having them. And Trump is antagonizing Iran. There's probably going to be a war in the second term. I can't say for sure. But that stuff's not popular. So the point I'm making is that why is it that suddenly Israel, quote, being overwhelmingly popular is the explanation for why it's a bipartisan consensus? Like, I really doubt that the people that vote for Bernie Sanders are pro-Israel. Right?
Wait, hold on real quick, because this is how like all of this works, and just building bullshit claim after bullshit claim after bullshit claim. Like, the tax cuts that Trump did were overwhelmingly popular. This idea that people were against them, Republicans, is just not true. This idea that foreign policy doesn't buckle to pressure at home. I mean, we literally just left Afghanistan in shambles, okay, and we are like basically completely threw away like everything that we had in Iraq, pulling into that country as well.